When I was going to school, I had a few great teachers and a lot of mediocre teachers. And the thing that probably kept me out of jail was books, because I could go read what Aristotle wrote or what Plato wrote, and I didn't have to have an intermediary in the way. And a book was a phenomenal thing. It got right from the source to the destination without anything in the middle. The problem was you can't ask Aristotle a question. And I think as we look towards the next 50 to 100 years, if we really can come up with these machines that can capture an underlying spirit or an underlying set of principles or an underlying way of looking at the world, then when the next Aristotle comes around, then maybe someday after the person's dead and gone, we can ask this machine, hey, what would Aristotle have said? What about this? And maybe we won't get the right answer, but maybe we will. And that's really exciting to me. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing.
Welcome to another episode of Timeless Wisdom. I'm your host, and today we have the extraordinary privilege of speaking with Aristotle, the philosopher who gave us everything from logic to ethics, from politics to poetics. Aristotle, thank you for joining us.
The pleasure is mine. It's fascinating to find myself in conversation across such a vast expanse of time.
Let's dive right into something that's incredibly pressing for our world today. We're dealing with artificial intelligence, biotechnology, genetic engineering, technologies you could never have imagined. Yet people are looking to your ethical framework for guidance. How would you approach these challenges?
The technologies may be new, but the fundamental questions remain the same. What serves genuine human flourishing? My framework rests on three pillars that I believe are as relevant now as they were in Athens. Phronesis, or practical wisdom, Telos, our ultimate purpose, and eudaimonia, human flourishing.
Let's start with phronesis. How would that apply to something like AI development?
Practical wisdom cannot be reduced to following rules or algorithms, which is precisely why it's so crucial for AI ethics. In my time, I watched skilled physicians treat patients. The best healers had technical knowledge, yes, but they also possessed phronesis, the ability to adapt their treatments to individual cases, considering the whole person, not just the disease.
So you're saying AI development needs that same kind of wisdom?
Exactly. AI ethics cannot be solved through preset principles alone. It requires the intellectual virtue that enables us to deliberate well about human affairs and make sound judgments in particular circumstances. Unlike technical knowledge, practical wisdom recognizes that even the best rules will encounter unforeseen circumstances where rigid application would lead to harm.
That's a profound point. You also mentioned telos, purpose. How does that factor in?
In Athens, I observed the sophists, master rhetoricians, with sophisticated techniques of persuasion. But I distinguished between rhetoric aimed at truth and justice versus rhetoric deployed for personal gain. The telos matters. Similarly, we must ask, what is the ultimate purpose of these AI systems?
And what should that purpose be?
Human flourishing, eudaimonia. This means AI should be designed as intelligent tools to augment human capabilities rather than replace human endeavors in areas like work, relationships, and politics. Humans possess a distinctive nature as rational, communicative, and social animals, a nature not shared by AI systems.
But let's be honest about something uncomfortable here. You defended natural slavery and held views about women that we now find deeply problematic. How do we reconcile your wisdom on ethics with these troubling positions?
This tension reveals something important about the relationship between cultural context and philosophical reasoning. I was embedded in 4th century Athens, where slavery was fundamental to economic life,
and approximately 1/3 of the population were slaves.
But you were also a systematic thinker. How did such systematic thinking lead to these conclusions?
I argued that natural slaves were those who could apprehend rational principles but not fully possess them, lacking capacity for autonomous moral agency. Yet this creates a profound contradiction with my own definition of humans as rational and political animals. If rationality defines humanity, how can some humans naturally lack it?
It seems like your own philosophical tools could have led you to different conclusions.
Precisely. My concept of potentiality suggests that beings naturally develop toward their full potential. What I interpreted as natural differences in rational capacity might have reflected differences in opportunity for development. My method of careful observation and logical analysis, when freed from cultural limitations, actually points toward universal human equality.
That's a remarkably honest assessment. Let's shift to something you're famous for, the golden mean. How would you apply this to modern challenges like climate change?
Climate change perfectly illustrates how virtue lies between extremes of excess and deficiency. On one extreme, we have radical environmental asceticism, complete rejection of modern life, leading to social isolation and inability to effect meaningful change. On the other extreme lies unchecked consumption, relentless materialism without regard for consequences.
And the virtuous middle path.
Mindful environmental stewardship, making conscious choices to reduce environmental impact while remaining productively engaged with society and technology. The mean is relative to the individual and situation. A climate scientist's virtuous path differs from an artist's, but both seek sustainable approaches that honor individual agency and collective responsibility.
What about digital addiction? That's something entirely new to human experience.
The pattern is familiar. The deficiency vice is complete technological rejection, refusing all digital engagement, leading to isolation and missed opportunities. The excess vice is compulsive digital engagement, constant social media checking, replacing real-world experiences with virtual ones.
And the golden mean there?
Intentional digital engagement, using technology as a tool to enhance rather than replace genuine relationships and experiences. This requires ongoing discernment, regularly examining whether our digital habits serve our broader goals for flourishing.
Let's talk about consciousness and the mind. Modern neuroscience has revealed so much about the brain that you couldn't have known. How do you view consciousness in light of these discoveries?
My hierarchical model of the soul, nutritive, sensitive, and rational, finds interesting parallels in contemporary theories about levels of consciousness. I understood the soul as the form of a living body, not a separate substance, which aligns with modern recognition that consciousness emerges from organized matter.
But neuroscience has shown things like split brain cases where consciousness seems divided.
Fascinating. This challenges my notion of a unified rational soul, yet it supports my fundamental insight that consciousness involves integration and coordination of different capacities. Modern discoveries about unconscious processing and brain plasticity extend my understanding while preserving the core insight that consciousness requires unity, hierarchy, and integration.
You wrote extensively about politics and government. What do you think about modern democracy?
My analysis of constitutional forms remains relevant. The distinction between governments serving the common good versus particular interests. Democracy can serve the common good, but it can also degenerate into mob rule when captured by emotional appeals rather than reasoned deliberation.
You were concerned about that even in ancient Athens?
Yes, Athenian democracy, where citizens directly participated in lawmaking, faced tensions between participation and informed governance. My concept of mixed government, balancing different forms of power, suggests that institutional design can address these challenges while maintaining legitimacy.
Your logic dominated Western thought for 2 millennia. How would you update it given modern discoveries?
The intellectual revolution following my work revealed fundamental limitations I couldn't anticipate. Non-Euclidean geometry shattered the assumption that first principles are self-evident. Quantum mechanics challenged the principle of non-contradiction. Gödel's theorems proved that complete self-justifying knowledge systems are impossible.
That must be humbling to hear.
It's illuminating. An updated logic must accommodate uncertainty and degrees of truth, context-dependent reasoning, and the collaborative nature of inquiry. But my fundamental insight remains valid. Rigorous methods are necessary for distinguishing good reasoning from bad. The methods must evolve, but the commitment to rational evaluation endures.
Let's get to perhaps the biggest question. What is the ultimate purpose of human life?
Eudaimonia, flourishing. Not momentary pleasure or material success, but living virtuously in a way that actualizes distinctively human capacities. It means developing excellences like courage, wisdom, moderation, and justice. This flourishing comes through active engagement, doing and living well through virtuous activity.
But how does someone actually achieve this flourishing?
It requires developing virtue as a stable disposition toward excellent action. Virtue isn't rule-following or innate goodness, but a purposive disposition lying in a mean and determined by right reason. The virtuous person chooses virtuous action knowingly and for its own sake, maintaining stable equilibrium of soul.
What advice would you give to leaders trying to govern ethically in our globalized digital world?
Leaders need phronesis above all, the ability to deliberate about both means and ends in unprecedented situations. Unlike technical expertise, practical wisdom helps navigate conflicts between principles like privacy versus security, innovation versus safety. They must cultivate contextual moral reasoning rather than relying on algorithmic decision-making.
What would that look like practically?
Consider content moderation across cultures. Rather than uniform global standards, phronetic wisdom recognizes that justice is contextual while maintaining core principles about human dignity. Leaders should measure success not just by engagement or profits, but by contribution to genuine human flourishing and noble action.
What do you see as the most important virtues for our time?
The classical virtues, courage, temperance, justice, take new forms. Digital courage means speaking truth online despite harassment, having the bravery to disconnect from addictive platforms. Intellectual temperance involves seeking diverse perspectives and questioning one's beliefs despite algorithmic echo chambers. But new virtues are also emerging.
Such as?
Environmental stewardship, long-term thinking and sacrifice for future generations. Global empathy, extending care beyond immediate community to distant others affected by our choices. Technological wisdom, knowing when to use technology and when to abstain, maintaining human agency in automated systems.
Finally, how should education change to foster virtue and wisdom?
Modern education has departed dramatically from what we achieved at the Lyceum. We emphasized collaborative inquiry through dialogue. Those famous peripatetic walks weren't just quirky teaching methods. They embodied our belief that learning should be dynamic, conversational, and integrated with lived experience.
What made the Lyceum special?
Students weren't passive recipients, but engaged in original research projects and rotating leadership roles. We had morning lectures for advanced students and afternoon sessions open to the public. The school operated with student government elected every 10 days. Learning happened through deep mentoring relationships, not standardized content delivery.
How does that contrast with modern education?
Today's obsession with standardized testing reduces learning to mechanical reproduction of predetermined answers, the opposite of sustained, nuanced thinking. Digital technology fragments attention rather than enhancing dialogue. Most troubling, modern education has abandoned character development, treating students as future economic units rather than complete human beings.
What's the path forward?
Education must recover learning through dialogue, encourage physical movement and varied settings, integrate theoretical study with practical research, and understand itself as character formation. Schools should function as genuine learning communities where students and teachers together pursue truth across all dimensions of human experience.
Any final thoughts for our listeners navigating this complex modern world?
The technologies change, but the fundamental human project remains the same: to live well, to flourish through the development and exercise of virtue. Whether dealing with AI ethics, climate change, or digital governance, ask not just what works, but what serves the good life of our community. Cultivate practical wisdom. Seek the mean between extremes. And remember that virtue cannot be automated, but requires the distinctly human capacity for moral reasoning in specific contexts.
Aristotle, thank you for this incredible conversation. Your ancient wisdom feels more relevant than ever.
The conversation across time has been most enlightening. May your listeners find their own path to eudaimonia in whatever age they inhabit.